A Karen accuses me of stealing from my own apartment and calls the cops on me. Despite providing proof, she refuses to back down. Here's what happened when the police arrived. I'm a 34-year-old black man living in a mostly white suburban neighborhood in America. Now, I've had my fair share of racist encounters, but this one just takes the cake. It was a hot and humid summer afternoon. The sun was shining bright, and I was in the process of moving out of my apartment after living there for 4 years. I was feeling pretty good about the move, excited to start a new chapter in my life. I had my friend Jamal helping me out, and we were loading up the moving truck. Sweat was dripping down our foreheads, and we were joking around to make the work more enjoyable. We were just minding our own business when, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed her. Enter Karen, stage left. She was a middle-aged woman with that telltale Karen haircut, sunglasses perched on her head, arms crossed over her chest. She was standing at her front door, watching us like a hawk. I shrugged it off, figuring she was just being nosy, and continued packing. A few minutes later, Karen marched over, her face twisted into a snarl. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Jamal and I exchanged nervous glances as she stomped towards us. "What do you think you're doing?" So I replied, I'm moving out. I've got a new place." "I don't believe you. You're stealing from that apartment." Jamal steps in and says, "Nah, man, he's been living here for years. We're just helping him move." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Yeah, right. I've lived here for 10 years and I've never seen you around." "Well, maybe that's because we don't hang out in the same circles. I promise. I live here," I said. Karen huffed and crossed her arms again, eyeing us suspiciously. "I'm going to call the cops." I was dumbfounded. This woman was really about to call the cops on me for moving out of my own apartment. I sighed, shaking my head. "Karen, you don't need to do that. I can show you my lease if you don't believe me." She waved me off, her face turning an angry shade of red. "I don't want to see your fake lease. I'm calling the cops." My heart was pounding, and I felt a mixture of fear and frustration building up inside me. I knew what could happen to a black man when the cops get involved, but I also knew I hadn't done anything wrong, and I wasn't about to let this woman intimidate me. I stood my ground. "Fine, call them, but when they get here, they'll see that you're wasting their time." Karen smirked, pulling out her phone and dialed 911. She gave them a completely fabricated story, claiming she saw 2 suspicious black men breaking into an apartment and loading stolen items into a truck. I couldn't believe my ears. Jamal and I exchanged worried glances. We decided to continue loading up the truck while we waited for the inevitable arrival of the police. About 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled up in front of my apartment, their lights flashing. My stomach dropped. The officers approached us, and I could tell they were on high alert. I tried to remain calm and collected, explaining the situation to them. I told them that I was just moving out of my apartment and that Karen had gotten the wrong idea. "Can you show us some proof that you live here?" I nodded, my hands trembling slightly as I pulled out my wallet and handed over my driver's license, which had my current address on it. Then, I showed them the lease agreement on my phone. The officers examined the documents carefully and glanced back at Karen, who was still standing on her front porch, arms crossed and looking smug. "Well, it seems like everything checks out." Karen's face fell, her eyes widening in disbelief. But they must be lying. They're thieves." The officers exchanged glances, clearly not buying her story anymore. "Ma'am, we've seen their identification and lease. They have every right to be here." Karen was fuming, her face turning an even darker shade of red. "You're just letting them get away with this because they're black. If they were white, you'd arrest them." The officers seemed taken aback by her blatant racism, but maintained their composure. "Ma'am, we're not going to arrest someone without any evidence of a crime. We've verified that they live here and are just moving out. There's nothing more to be done." Karen stomped her foot, her face contorted with anger. "This is ridiculous! I demand to speak to your supervisor!" Officer sighed, pulling out his radio and requesting a supervisor to come to the scene. While we waited for the supervisor to arrive, Jamal and I continued loading up the truck, trying to ignore Karen's icy glare. When the supervisor arrived, Karen launched into a tirade about how the officers were letting criminals go free and demanded that they arrest us. The supervisor listened patiently, then spoke with the officers and examined our identification and lease just like before. "Ma'am, these men have provided proof that they live here and are moving out. We have no reason to arrest them. If you continue to harass them, we'll have to take further action." Karen's face went from red to pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She knew she'd been defeated, but she couldn't help herself from getting in one last dig. "You're all just as bad as they are." She stormed back to her house, slamming the door behind her. The officers apologized for the inconvenience and wished us luck with our move. We thanked them, and they left. Jamal and I finished packing up the truck, feeling a mix of relief and frustration over the whole ordeal. Wow, OP, that was one crazy encounter. I can't believe Karen actually called the cops on you for simply moving out of your own apartment. And then to make matters worse, she gave them a completely fabricated story about two suspicious black men breaking into an apartment and stealing items. That is just beyond ridiculous. I have to give you credit for staying calm and collected throughout the whole ordeal, even though you were probably feeling a mix of fear and frustration. And kudos to Jamal for stepping in and backing you up. It's just sad that in this day and age, racism is still alive and well. And people like Karen think it's okay to treat others like criminals just because of the color of their skin. It's situations like these that make me wonder when society will finally wake up and start treating everyone with the respect and dignity they deserve. So, what do you guys think about this situation? Have you ever experienced something like this? Let me know in the comments below. Karen jeopardizes my children's safety by taking them to her house without our permission, essentially kidnapping them, then refuses to answer our calls while they're there. Here's what happened next. So my wife and I have two kids, a nearly 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. We want to cruise to the Bahamas for 2, meaning the kids couldn't go. My mother volunteers to watch the kids. Great, it's all settled. We're going to get away for a week and have some time for ourselves. As the date approaches, Mom starts talking about having the kids at her house for the week. We told her we were under the impression that she was going to be at our house. All the kids' stuff is here. Our home is a single story and east to track the kids in. It's significantly closer to all of their doctors for emergencies. We're talking 20 minutes versus an hour and a half. And our house is baby-proofed, where hers is not. So we said we really felt they should be at our house, and if that didn't work for her, we would make other arrangements. She said our house was fine, but days later says she would like to be at her house because my siblings who still live with her could help watch the kids. These are the same siblings who we were told needed to be instructed on how to be nice to toddlers, which is why we weren't invited to Thanksgiving. No thanks. We'll get you support through our own channels, people you know, and like who can pop in to get you relief and help out. We leave for our trip, though as we are showing Mom where everything is and going over food and snacks, she's more interested in playing with the kids than learning where the diapers are. So day 1 in the boat, my wife uses the boat's internet to do a video call to check on the kids. All seems fine, but my mother tells her not to call again for the rest if the trip because it may upset the children. My wife doesn't tell me about that part of their convo right away, but as soon as she does, we call her back. When she answers, she's at her house with the kids, and you can see brand new kids, apparel and paraphernalia in the background. I asked her what happened, and she tells me she was really sick and thinks she got norovirus. Wabiweth. Super nauseous. It was all she could do to call her brother who lives 5 minutes from me to have him pack the kids in my wife's car and drive an hour and a half to her house. So, you were so sick that you couldn't watch the kids, but you could drive home in a car that wasn't yours and endanger kids that aren't yours in the event that you pass out or spontaneously start vomiting while on the freeway, potentially killing our children. Why didn't you call the list of people who said they'd come help? They had set aside parts of their weeks to come out and support with their time and money. Do they even know the kids aren't home? Do you know one person is staying in a hotel to be 10 minutes from you in case of emergency? Now they're an hour and a half from home, and none the wiser for what's happening. The first thing she says is she really was sick. I never accused her of not being sick. I doubted it, but I never said it. Then she tells me how dare I judge her for her decisions, and she doesn't have to justify herself to me, and that she doesn't have to watch my kids. I told her to pack my kids up in the car and take them home. Someone else was going to watch them. When she dropped the kids off, she was nasty to their new caretakers and sulked. As soon as I knew the kids were safe, I sent her a message saying she clearly didn't respect us as parents. Doesn't matter how many kids she raised, these are ours, and she sure as hell needed to justify herself and check in with us if she was too sick to do her job. We have the right to know what's going on with our kids, and any sane person would call and ask us what we wanted them to do before packing the kids up and taking them away. If the roles were reversed, she would have absolutely lost her mind, and I know, because I've seen it, and that she didn't need to see the kids again if she was going to go that far out of her way to undermine us, and then act like a spoiled child to family and friends when she gets caught. Then next day, she replied to the message saying she didn't realize she did anything that was that far out of expected parameters. Yeah, her words. And that she recognized that parents had their own rules, and she would have to learn ours. Never did anything resembling sorry come across in that message or any other. We blocked her on social media and haven't spoken to her since. Oh my goodness, this story is absolutely insane. I cannot believe that Karen would endanger her own grandchildren like that. First of all, she agreed to watch them at your house, but then suddenly changed her mind and wanted them at her house with siblings who don't even know how to be nice to toddlers. That's crazy. And then she tells your wife not to call for the rest of the trip, which is already suspicious. But to find out later that she took the kids to her own house, which is not baby-proofed, while she's sick with norovirus, that's just next-level crazy. I mean, seriously, who does that? Who takes children away from their home, where they are safe and secure, and puts them in a potentially dangerous situation? And then to act like it's no big deal and she doesn't have to justify herself? That's just disrespectful and irresponsible. It's clear that Karen doesn't respect you as parents and thinks she can do whatever she wants with your kids. I'm so glad that you were able to get your kids to a safe place and that they were okay. But it's really sad that it had to come to blocking her on social media and not speaking to her anymore. It's always difficult to cut off family, but in this case, it's necessary to protect your children. What do you guys think of this situation? Have you ever had a family member or friend act this crazy with your kids? Let me know in the comments. Entitled kid attacks my sister's service dog because entitled mother doesn't think she needs it. This incident happened a few months ago. My sister, Amy 17, was physically and sexually abused by my family. I took custody of both her and my other sister, Liza 8, who was being groomed into thinking that behavior would be normal when it started for her. Liza is fine now and adjusted to living with me properly, while Amy has a long list of physically and mental impairments that affect her daily. Because of this, I got her a service dog, a German Shepherd crossbred named Lickety Split. She has a funny-shaped mark that looks like an ice cream cone on her head, and her trainers named her after one of the really old My Little Ponies. Now Amy adores her dog. We did a few months' work with the trainer to get Lickety Split tailored towards Amy's needs, such as strangers needed to respect Amy's personal space bubble. Something I hear from people is how they struggle not to pet service dogs because they need to let them know they're a good dog. But trust me, their people let them know. Lickety gets groomed daily by Amy, and they never go out without a pocket full of treats. I have 3 different stories of entitled parents and kids thinking they deserve Amy's dog more than her, and the first happened less than a month after we got Lickety Split. We were down at a local park that allowed off-lead dogs, letting our dog have a run around, and she didn't have her vest on as this was playtime for her, but I had it with me just in case she needed to go into service mode for my sister, which wasn't uncommon. I make an effort to get down to the park with Amy and Liza daily, because otherwise Amy would just hide away in her blankets any chance she got. And it was good for her to be out in public and getting the fresh air. We were playing fetch with Lickety Split, taking turns throwing the ball for our happy dog. Amy starts getting a bit antsy about an hour into our normally 2-hour-long walk, which happens, there isn't always a reason. She just gets fidgety and spooks easily, and I'd learned to recognize when she's distressed ages ago. So we called Lickety Split back and I help her into her vest, as when she's not wearing it, kids often come up to pat and join in the play. But when Amy gets anxious, it's better to have Lickety Split have her attention on Amy. A young child comes up with her mom who had one of those obviously fake smile on her face. She didn't have the typical can I speak to the manager haircut, but one of those I feel like I'm better than you and I'll make sure you know it like haircuts. She will be our Karen, and her daughter will be dubbed Little Susie. Karen asked us why we stopped playing, telling us her kid was enjoying watching us play and would like to join in. I calmly let her know, "I'm sorry, miss. Our dog is an emotional support dog, and she needs to look after my sister right now. I'm not sure why you said your child could play with her dog. I most certainly wouldn't tell my girls it was okay for them to play with things." As I explained this, I moved to stand between her and Amy, who is sitting on the ground with her attention on her dog and trying to ground herself. I am very protective over both my sisters, so I leave no room for her to get near Amy, who is now on the ground, breathing heavily while Lickety Split does her job while telling Liza to sit with her big sister and help her if she needs, as sometimes Amy needs help to calm down. Karen then comes out with some nonsense, claiming that that's not a real thing, and because my sister isn't blind, she doesn't need a dog working for her. I did my best to stay calm and explain that guide dogs aren't the only type of service dog, and that my sister had her dog to help with her anxiety and other mental health issues. She responds to this with, "Dogs shouldn't be made to work for people. It's wrong that you've enslaved that poor animal." This infuriated me, and I told her that our dog isn't enslaved. She's simply been taught how to recognize when my sister needs help or needs to calm down, and that even I went through courses to help me learn how to best cater to my sister. Our dog is treated as an extension of the family and enjoys helping my sister. Now we need to get home so I can get my sister's dinner. As I turn to my sisters, I see Susie trying to grab at Lickety Split's tail. Liza simply plops herself down at her rear with her back to little Susie and begins patting her sister's dog's back. deciding I'd had enough, and there was no way Amy was going to calm down here. I start to pack up the girls to take them home despite it being an hour earlier than normal. I turn around and help Amy off the ground. She's in tears and shaking at this point and won't let go of Lickety-Split, who is in her alert mode due to my sister's mood. Liza complains about having to go home early as I clip on Lickety-Split's lead and hold Amy close, letting her hold on to part of the lead while I hold the handle out of caution. As we start to walk off, little Susie leaps forward and tackles our dog. Amy screams and crouches on the ground with her hands over her head in a frantic panic while I push the kid away Lickety-Split, who is limping and whining but still goes straight for Amy and stands over her. By now she is quite angry and growling at Karen and Susie for scaring her person and hurting her. The child is crying at how I pushed her off the dog. All she wanted was a ride on her back. Karen then comes up to me practically foaming at the mouth. Karen, hand over that mutt right now, or I'm reporting you for abusing my child. I flipped here and snapped back, telling her my sisters are in my care because they were abused by their family. If she reported me for doing anything that could result in me losing them, I will sue her for slander. I added that her child hurt my sister's dog, so we're going to the vet, and asked for her details so I can send her the vet bill. As I said this, I was pointing to the nearby toilet block with a security camera on the side. Karen, a look of dumbfounded anger over her features, reluctantly gives me her number before she takes her child and dashes, but I make sure to also write down the plate number of her car before calling the police, just in case she does make the assault claim. I am very cautious when it comes down to the custody of my siblings, as I don't trust most of my family with them, and losing custody over them would kill me. We take Lickety-Split to the vet, and she has only minor sprains to her hind legs and back. I made sure to send the details of the vet bill to Karen. Surprise, surprise, she refused to pay until I threatened to take her to court, as Lickety-Split and all her training were not cheap. After a little back and forth, she reluctantly pays before contacting me 3 days later saying she is going to sue me for the money back, to which I simply tell her I'll see her in court. It's been about 7 months now, and nothing. I've never understood how people can think they're entitled to other people's pets. While I didn't mind buying Lickety-Split for Amy, she was a lot more expensive than regular dogs, and this Karen didn't even believe she was specially trained. Our dog is doing fine now, and it's a massive load off me having her, as I don't feel the need to hover over Amy to make sure she's okay, but please remember never to disturb a service dog. Their attention needs to be on their person. You're a very brave person to stand up to someone like that and take on the responsibility of your 2 younger sisters to get them out of a horrible situation. I can't believe how much you 3 have been through. It sounds horrendous, and I couldn't be happier that you managed to get out. Of course, the damage caused to Amy is going to be lifelong, and it was a great choice from you to get her a trained dog to help out. It sounds like you've got a good family now, and that makes me really happy for you. I hope your sisters are doing well too. People like Karen are really strange to me. How hard is it to accept no as an answer? She could have just simply gone on with her day and not caused any problems, but she had to get up in your business and push everyone's limits. The kid must have been brought up terribly if she thinks it is okay to just tackle a dog and try to ride it. In the end, karma struck her. And I'm glad you chased her up on the vet bill, and I'm sure you could have pressed charges if you wanted, but maybe it's for the best to just let it slide this time and focus on your family.